Okay, let's unpack this. You sent over a whole batch of articles and notes covering something that really grabbed headlines recently.
Yeah.
This very public, kind of fierce conflict between Elon Musk and former President Trump.
hmm
And it's all centered on this major policy bill, one Trump championed, that Musk is now, well, attacking in really strong terms.
Yeah, incredibly strong. And what makes it stand out, I think, is the timing.
Exactly. It happened just days after Musk had apparently met with Trump right there in the Oval Office, and I had just finished up this government advisory role he had.
Right.
And his words for the bill, disgusting abomination. Pretty direct.
That language is certainly extreme. And,
Mhm.
the reports, they make it clear this isn't being seen as just like a simple policy disagreement.
Oh.
Commentators, reporters, they're describing it as a public break, a really significant test for a relationship that, well, it's sometimes been strained, maybe, but often seen as quite close,
Yeah,
between two really influential figures outside politics.
right. And so our mission here for this deep dive is to get into the details, the context that's in the material you shared. We want to help you understand the specifics of this bill Musk is hitting so
Yeah,
hard.
let's actually,
Exactly. What language is he using? What are the reported reasons behind this sudden rift? And the political stakes, which seem pretty high.
big ones.
So we'll lay out the facts, the perspectives that are presented in these articles, just to help you get informed quickly on what's going on here.
And the timing, like you said, it's just crucial. This bill is at a really pivotal point in the Senate.
Right.
And reports suggest Musk's comments, well, they might be amplifying some internal tensions within the Republican Party and just feeding this whole broader political debate around the legislation.
Okay, so let's jump right into Musk's reaction then. The articles, they really highlight just how sharp his criticism was, especially on X, his platform. He absolutely did not hold back.
No, he used incredibly strong terms. I mean, disgusting abomination, like you said,
Ugh.
but also described it as absurd, huge, and corrupt. And he specifically called out elements he labeled pork-filled. These are not subtle digs at all.
Not at all. And his main objections, at least as they're presented in the reporting, they seem to focus really heavily on the fiscal side, the money.
Absolutely. He
And
claimed it
his-
would dramatically increase the budget deficit. He even cited a specific figure, didn't he? Something like $2.5 trillion?
Yeah, with exclamation marks.
Yeah.
And other estimates included in the reporting put the cost around $600 billion just in the next fiscal year, and maybe $3.8 trillion over 10 years.
Right.
So big numbers regardless.
Huge numbers. And he explicitly linked this spending to putting an unbearable debt burden on Americans.
Right, and linked it to corruption too, using those terms like pork-filled and also political, which, often implies political favors or earmarks slipped in there.
And what's also striking, I think, is how he connected this policy critique directly to political action. Reports note he actually called on voters to contact their representatives, tell them to oppose it.
Yeah, and he issued a pretty direct warning to politicians who vote for it, didn't he? Saying they should be ashamed.
He did. And suggesting they could face consequences come November,
Yeah.
vowing he'd mobilize his supporters against them.
Wow. So his stated goal was pretty clear. Repeal the bill.
Yep.
His reason.
Hmm.
In his own words, making America bankrupt is unacceptable.
So, I mean, given how fierce that opposition is, the obvious question becomes, what exactly is this bill? What are we talking about here?
Good point. Let's look at the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, or the SOON, as it's apparently been called by Trump.
Right. So the bill, it's a pretty significant package. It covers a lot of different areas.
Yeah.
The reporting lists several key components. It would extend Trump's 2017 tax cuts,
Okay.
substantially increase defense spending, provide funding for these government-backed migrant repatriation efforts.
Right.
But then it also includes measures to decrease Medicaid spending, cut some clean energy credits, and reduce food subsidies. So a real mix.
And a really central feature, and probably the one that really drew Musk's fire, is that it allows the government to increase its borrowing authority. It raises the debt ceiling by, what, $4 trillion?
A substantial amount, yeah.
$4 trillion. And its political well, it's not exactly smooth sailing, is it?
No, not at all. Reports say it passed the House, but just barely. Like 215 to 214 back in May.
Wow.
Very close. And now it's facing this critical test in the Senate. And, everyone expects unified Democratic opposition.
Right.
So with the Republicans having a slim majority, 53 seats, if the Democrats all vote no, The bill can't lose more than 3 Republican votes. That's the math.
Okay. So considering what's in the bill and how precarious its stagnation is in the Senate, the timing of Musk's sudden, very strong opposition, it is definitely surprising, especially given how recently he was involved with the administration.
Absolutely. The articles really hammer this point, the surprising timing. Musk had just finished his stint as a special government employee, right? He'd served, 129 or 130 days with that DOGE team, which was focused specifically on finding cost-cutting opportunities within the government.
Right, the irony.
Exactly. And reports highlight the shock that this fierce public attack came just days after he'd reportedly met with Trump in the Oval Office. It's that shift. From working on cost reduction inside the government to then publicly lambasting a major piece of legislation backed by that same administration. That's what many sources found remarkable.
Yeah, you can see why. And how has Trump reportedly reacted to all this?
Well, the reports indicate he's unhappy
Uh-huh.
and has lost patience with Musk's criticism. He's apparently finding these escalated attacks kind of hard to understand, especially after they'd been working pretty closely.
Right.
Senior advisors are apparently also caught off guard, blindsided maybe.
I bet.
And one White House official was quoted saying something like, "It's too early to predict the future of their relationship." But adding that observation that while Trump might forgive things, he doesn't really forget verbal contempt.
Oof. Okay, so this is where the reporting gets really interesting because it's not just covering the fight, it's digging into the potential reasons behind this sudden break. What are the triggers the articles are suggesting might be behind Musk's really strong opposition?
There are several possibilities laid out in the sources. One potentially significant trigger mentioned is a personnel decision,
Oh, okay.
specifically the withdrawal of Jared Isaacman's nomination to be head of NASA.
Ah,
Isaacman is described in reports as a close ally of Musk, and sources suggest Musk was angered by this decision. Some reports even say he complained that, his prior financial support for Trump's election didn't seem to prevent his ally from getting blocked.
interesting. So a key appointment decision might have played a role. What else did the reporting point to? Any other factors?
Yeah, another possibility that's raised or it relates to potential business interests.
Like Tesla.
Exactly. Some reports note the bill includes provisions that could potentially affect clean energy subsidies or maybe EV tax credits, areas that could impact companies like Tesla. House Speaker Johnson was actually quoted suggesting this could be a factor. And White House officials are also reported to view Musk's stance as, maybe prioritizing his personal economic interests over, public ones.
Okay. That definitely provides a different angle to think about. Was there anything connected to his recent work, the cost-cutting stuff he was doing?
Yes, that's definitely presented as another potential source of frustration for him.
How so?
Well, the idea is that the bill's huge spending increases and that big $4 trillion hike in the debt ceiling seemed to just directly contradict the whole point of the cost reduction efforts his DOGE team was focused on.
Right. Undermining their work.
Precisely. Reports mention the team proposed billions in cuts, and apparently those cuts are included in the bill somewhere, but they're just dwarfed by the massive new spending and debt figures. So, yeah, you could see how that might feel like their efforts were undercut.
Okay. And I think I saw a mention in one report about a specific project disagreement, something about the FAA.
That's correct, yeah. An Axios report, referenced in one of the articles we looked at, mentioned that one particular issue for Musk related to a proposal he had for Starlink.
His satellite company.
Right, for Starlink to run the FAA's air traffic control system. And that proposal was reportedly rejected. Reasons given were technical issues and also potential conflict of interest concerns.
Ah, okay. So a specific project rejection could also be part of the mix.
Potentially contribute to the frustration, yeah.
And then, of course, there's the reason Musk himself explicitly stated. The one he put out there publicly.
Right. You have to include that.
Yeah.
At face value, his primary stated concern is just the fundamental sustainability of U.S. debt and the deficit. That's the core reason he gives for opposing the bill so strongly. Making America bankrupt is unacceptable.
So the reporting suggests it could be any one of these, or maybe, a combination of these factors boiling over and contributing to this sudden break.
Seems plausible, based on the sources.
Okay, now let's look at the political fallout, particularly in the Senate, where, like you said, this bill faces its absolute biggest challenge.
Yeah, the math there is critical. Given the need for Republican votes and the expected unified Democratic opposition, every single Republican vote is absolutely crucial for this thing to pass.
And this seems to be where Musk's criticism is really having an impact, according to the reporting.
It appears so. His very public stance is seen as amplifying the voices of the Republican budget hardliners. Senators like Rand Paul, Mike Lee, Ron
The
Johnson.
fiscal conservatives?
Exactly. They were already pushing back against the bill in its current form, demanding pretty significant spending cuts. And some articles even framed the whole situation as Rand Paul and Elon Musk versus Donald Trump,
Wow.
highlighting how Musk's voice is sort of aligning with and maybe strengthening the position of these key Republican senators who could potentially block the bill.
And does it affect other Republicans too, like the more moderate ones?
Well, it adds complexity there as well. It could potentially influence those middle ground Republicans like Lisa Murkowski, maybe Susan Collins.
How so?
Reports suggest they might raise objections if the hardliners push too hard for deep cuts to, popular social programs as the price for their support. And Senator Murkowski has reportedly acknowledged Musk as an influential voice, someone whose comments carry weight. So it just complicates the dynamics.
And there's that interesting layer of irony that one of the articles pointed out.
Yes, that's a really notable point. The reports highlight this paradox, right? Musk says he opposes the bill because he's worried about unsustainable debt. But his actions, by potentially helping to block this bill in Congress,
Which raises the debt ceiling.
exactly, which raises the debt ceiling, his actions could ironically speed up a prospect of a U.S. debt default.
Which is the very thing he says he wants to avoid.
Right. Treasury officials have warned the U.S. could run out of borrowing authority, essentially as soon as August if the debt ceiling isn't raised.
Yeah.
And raising the debt ceiling is precisely one of the main things this bill does. It's a real twist.
That definitely puts a spotlight on the high stakes involved here. Okay, so beyond those initial reports of Trump's displeasure, how have he and his allies reacted more publicly or, trying to manage this situation?
Well, the official White House response, as reported, came from the press secretary, Caroline Leavitt.
Okay.
She stated that Trump is aware of Musk's position, but he remains fully committed to the bill, still calling it big and beautiful,
Sticking to the message.
sticking to the message.
And were there any efforts by allies, maybe in Congress, to kind of smooth things over?
Yes, reports mention that too. Senator Lindsey Graham reportedly tried to, calm the waters a bit, said the bill wasn't a disgrace, and suggested maybe it could be modified later.
Okay, damage control.
He's like it.
Yeah.
And House Speaker Mike Johnson reportedly pushed back on Musk's criticisms directly in a private conversation.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And he also apparently worked to reassure Republican members who might have been, nervous about Musk's public warnings about voting for the bill.
Right, the threat to mobilize supporters.
Exactly. Johnson also went public, saying he felt Musk was flat out wrong about the bill's specifics, that he missed the point. And he expressed regret that Musk criticized it publicly right after they had spoken.
So a mix of public defense of the bill and some behind-the-scenes efforts to contain the political fallout. What about the Democrats? How did they react to seeing a Trump ally publicly attacking this major piece of legislation?
Well, as you might expect, some Democrats, according to the reports, basically welcomed Musk's criticism.
Saw an opportunity.
Pretty much. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, for instance, reportedly used it as leverage, arguing that, look, if even a figure like Musk, who's been aligned with Trump, thinks this bill is problematic, well, that just highlights how bad it must be.
Right, using it as political ammunition. This really is a fascinating, complex situation just unfolding in real time. So let's connect this back to you, the listener. Why does this unexpected conflict, focused on this particular bill, why does it matter?
Well, as the articles really show, this is clearly a high-stakes political battle. And it has potential, far-reaching impacts.
Yeah.
It affects the national debt, government spending priorities, the whole direction of policy. But it also, I think, offers this compelling look at how powerful voices, people operating outside traditional government structures, can significantly influence political debates, especially at these really critical legislative moments.
Right.
So this deep dive hopefully helps you see that complex interplay, the policy substance, the personal dynamics, the political maneuvering. It's all described right there in the reports you shared.
So to sum it all up then, we're basically witnessing a clash between two hugely influential figures over a massive spending and debt bill.
Yep.
And it's all unfolding just as that bill faces its toughest test there in the Senate, and just as the U.S. is apparently approaching a potential debt deadline.
Precisely.
Yeah.
The timing couldn't be more dramatic, really.
Yeah. And maybe as a final provocative thought for you to consider, mull over. Think about that irony we discussed, the one highlighted in the reporting.
Oh.
Musk opposing the bill, saying it's out of concern for the national debt, while his actions could potentially speed up the very debt crisis he says he wants to avoid. What does this whole unexpected turn of events, as laid out in these articles, tell us about, I don't know, the unpredictable nature of politics today? And the real influence these high-profile individuals can have in shaping not just public discussion, but actual legislative outcomes.
It's a lot to think about. Really shows how volatile things can be.